Hello, everybody, and welcome to FTB Sports. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody is well today. I'm delighted to be joined by two fantastic people today. First, I'm going to go to Nathan. How are you, Nathan?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. And you've seen him before. You was on with me before. Ian, how are you, mate?
I'm good. Chomping at the bit for the new season. Salivating like a Pavlov dog. I think that's the phrase.
I think we're all chomping. It's not very far away now, is it? So we'll get into it straight away, guys. Nailed on top four. So we've seen from seasons before, there's always those kind of top four that are in there or around there. Obviously, this is the table from last season. So it's going to be a question to both of you. And I mean, feel free if you don't agree with things with each other, wait until the other person's finished and then debate between yourselves. Is there a nailed on top four this season?
No. I want to use the word unprecedented. I know we're bored to sick of it during COVID or whatever, but the unprecedented aspect of a World Cup in the middle of the season, the unprecedented Chelsea ownership situation, the moderately unprecedented United managerial change. I think that there are 6 teams, and I think it's very, very difficult to say how those 6 will fit into the 4. Would be my synopsis. Nate?
I mean, it depends on what kind of narrative you want to follow, because if you want to look at history in terms of, say, from 2010 onwards, you'd argue there is a favourable top 4, but the gap between the so-called other 14 and the so-called top 6 has narrowed dramatically. West Ham have qualified for Europe consecutively. Leicester have qualified for Europe as well as won a cup. Wolves have qualified for Europe. Burnley have qualified for Europe. So, look, don't get me wrong. You would expect the Chelseas, the Man Cities, Liverpools and such to get into those top 4 positions, as you say, nailed on top 4. But the gap in the Premier League is getting very, very close now. Because
I'm going to challenge that, Nate. I'm going to challenge that. I hope you don't mind. I don't agree with that, because I think, and it's actually good that we've got a chart underneath us. I think West Ham, to an extent, have got a bit weaker. And Leicester have got undoubtedly weaker. They are going to have to sell probably 1 or 2 key players. They're plummeting. Brighton, we already know, have been plundered by Spurs. City after left back. I think they're weaker. Wolves did not have such a good end to the season. Newcastle, yes, will improve. Palace are improving. But honestly, I think that gap, I think the gap between the top 6 and the rest will be bigger this season than ever before, because of the weakness of those teams in behind. And you look at the brass that Arsenal has spent, Spurs have spent, they've both got good seasoned managers now who aren't new to the club. United, Ten Hag cannot do worse. He is going to jet propel that team. He's going to put all that bravado. So if you think about how Spurs, Arsenal and Man U have strengthened, and you compare that with West Ham, question mark, have they strengthened? Not sure. Leicester are weaker. Brighton are weaker. Wolves are treading water. Newcastle will be moderately better. Palace moderately better. I don't see that, mate.
You can say that, but look at it. Most clubs 10 years ago couldn't touch City, Liverpool, and the like. Everybody on their day can be anybody. Yes, of course, the bigger clubs have better budgets, better spending, more money. That's a fact. It can't be paralleled. But let's be real. Look at Man City and Palace last season. Most people expect City to wipe the floor with Palace. Totally reasonable logic, because City have a much better squad and much better players than Palace do. That's totally fair. No one could have told me City would fail to score in both games against Palace. Admittedly, extenuating circumstances, City pretty much hammered the door at Selhurst Park, just couldn't break it down. But the quality of the league itself has improved. Yes, you're right. These teams have weakened. But the overall quality of the league has gone up, because, let's face it, Liverpool should have snotted Brentford when they played them at Brentford's ground. They drew 3-3. Liverpool don't draw games handily. Liverpool are a winning machine. Man City are a winning machine. So to see them drop points to the so-called lesser teams, I know what you're saying, and you're correct that the likes of West Ham and Brighton have weakened. I'm delighted Brighton have weakened. I hope the fuckers get relegated this season. I've no shame in saying that. But what I would say to that is, yes, the bigger clubs in the so-called traditional top six are going to pull away a bit. But let's be fair. This World Cup season, all it takes is one or two key players in those big team squads to go missing, and the quality shrinks again. Because bear in mind, City can't field every player they have on the pitch. You have to pick an 11. Same with Liverpool. Same with Tottenham, Man United, and such. I get what you're saying, Ian, and you're right. But at the same time, the point of it is you've got to watch it. You've got to watch it because the league itself loves to throw a spanner in the works.
Yep. There will be clubs who will be nemesis for those top six. You could have listed along with Palace, and I was at the Etihad when Palace won 2-0 in the season, and I was at Palace later in the season when City didn't score. I totally accept that. But one hot day doesn't make a summer, doesn't make a season. Because you could draw into that Southampton. City had a terrible performance against Southampton last season, home and away, and obviously got whipped by Spurs home and away. And the season before, they got done over twice by Leicester. So, yeah, I accept that. But when you've got the sizes of squads now and the quality of those top six, you're right. Sod's Law comes into it. Injuries come into it, runs of form. When we had African nations, the World Cup, all those combinations and permutations of factors will ensure that, the one hot days that Palace and Southampton have against those teams are not sustainable. They're just not sustainable. Those top six will go on like juggernauts because of the size of the squad, the fact that they can double cover almost in every position. And, we saw it, when Leicester got 2 or 3 key injuries, they really struggled in key areas, similar with Brighton. And obviously for Everton, who again, I think will have a very, very troublesome season. They got devastating injuries, and obviously the Icelandic player that we can't talk about, who did whatever he did and then has left the club, but he was a £50 million player. So I still think it's all about the depth of the squad and being able to ride out Sod's Law, injuries, lack of form, juggle it round, keeping players on their toes. And I think the top six are miles better than the rest. I think that there will be wonderful days. That's why we love the Premier League. There'll be days when someone you don't expect beats someone you think it can't happen. Liverpool will lose away at someone bonkers like Nottingham Forest. Man City will lose at home to Brentford or something like that. It will happen, but that's the Premier League. We love it. It's happened every year for 150 years or whatever, I reckon.
No, yeah, you're making very good points. Very good points. I just want to say I apologise for the language. Obviously, passion comes out there as well, so I do apologise for that. But like I said, it's football. People get passionate about it. But like talking about this nailed on top four, can we all agree that Man City and Liverpool are going to be there? They're going to be in the top four. You can see on that graphic there the difference between them and the likes of Chelsea, Spurs, Arsenal, United. There's a massive difference.
I think Spurs, Arsenal, United will fight over that top four position. The $1 million question is Chelsea. What will happen to Chelsea? They've been, shell-shocked by what's happened to the ownership of the club. They've lost key central defenders. The one saving grace they've got, even if he's 30, 31, is Koulibaly is an absolute monster of a player. I think one of the things we'll enjoy in the Premier League, and we've seen this guy. I wish he'd come to the Premier League at 23, 24. This guy he makes John Terry, I reckon, look like a poodle, versus a Rottweiler. I think we'll be shocked to our boots. We will see that guy come forward at corners, charge out of defence against teams time and time and time again. Midfielders, defenders will quake in his wake. Koulibaly could save Chelsea, but I still think they're very unknown. I don't know what's going to happen to Chelsea.
No, I think Chelsea could drop out the top four. Because you look at the way Arsenal have been smart. They've recruited players that have that top four experience. Obviously, Ian, you've seen Jesus and Zinchenko go to Arsenal. Man United, of course, have brought in Eric Ten Hag to rescue them from the perils of Oli and Ralph Rangnick. Although, to be fair, I think United have got way more problems than just picking the manager because they've signed too many players on big contracts and it hasn't worked out. United haven't taken risks. They've gone for the big names and it's flopped. You look at, Tottenham example. They've been a little bit over-reliant on Kane and Son, but they've now tried to spread that out with Kulusevski and Lucas Moura, to name two. They got rid of some deadwood like Dele Alli. So, look, it's going to get a lot tighter than it has been. But I think Man City and Liverpool, they're in their own bracket in the Premier League. And that's mainly because Pep and Klopp have got this wonderful throwback to the Ferguson-Wenger era where Ferguson and Wenger were in their own mini bracket between the pair of them. It was them two and the rest. It's happened now with Liverpool and City. Obviously, the aspect of the so-called rivalry is a little bit different to Liverpool, Man United and Man United, Man City. Because for the most part, Man City weren't on Liverpool's radar prior to 2009. City haven't really challenged Liverpool decades and decades and decades. But to be fair to Man City, Ian, I think now because Pep has taken up the levels from Pellegrini, who obviously got City's second title, if I'm correct.
And look what he did at Betis last year.
Yeah. So City have obviously come a long way from being we might do something. Now you're thinking, do you know what? We need to do something. Obviously, the big albatross around City's neck is the Champions League. Liverpool have got bags of experience in that. But City's experience now is the Premier League. Even when City don't win it, the next season, if they say, right, we effed up in 3, 2, 4 games, 5 games, the next season, they win those games. They clinch those games. Now, obviously, look, Liverpool and City on their own, untouchable. So Chelsea, for me, could be the team that drops out, and Arsenal, Man United need to capitalize on Chelsea dropping out. I'm not going to write Chelsea off, but Chelsea are not as strong as they have been in previous seasons, is what I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to drop down to a little bit of detail. I was thinking about Spurs, and I know there's North Londoners who watch the show, etc. And I just wanted to, they've spent a lot of money. Number one, I'll go out public and say I rate Antonio Conte. He is determined, he's strategic, he's passionate, he takes no prisoners. He will drill and instill top performance and discipline at that team. I rate the manager, Antonio Conte. However, he's also the manager who said to the board, go out and get me these players. Richarlison. And you always think, well, what would I do if I was a manager and I had 60 million quid to spend on a striker? Richarlison wouldn't be in the first 5 strikers I would think of for that money. I find him underwhelming, not a very good team player, a bit of a whinger, doesn't track back as much as you'd like in a Spurs team. I have a question mark about that 60 million. Bissouma, coming from Brighton, yes, there was lots and lots of pundits, but I can only say the only times I've ever seen him live in games, I've not even noticed he's been on the pitch. And Spurs are getting kind of infamous for trashing players that I think would do really well. So let's look at the Spurs midfield. They signed Ndombele. Honestly, I saw him. I think he played for Lyon. I thought he was a world beater. I thought he was going to be the new Patrick Vieira. I thought he was an absolute storming midfield. I have no idea what Spurs did to him. And then you had Sissoko, who actually had not a bad season at Watford in the end. Again, he was, 5 games out of 6, he wasn't even on the pitch and occasionally play well. And then obviously the lad who not even Middlesbrough didn't rate enough to keep, but sent out on loan to Middlesbrough. Or Middlesbrough didn't rate, sent out on loan, to Forest, Spence. All that fuss about him. Davies, they all say, hey, we've signed him on a big contract today. Well, I've always rubbed my hands with glee when he's been in the team and City have been playing against him. So I would just put a question mark about the Spurs signings. And as Colm, we mentioned last week, Arsenal, and I'm sorry, Foxy and all those guys that are watching, but Zinchenko, I'm not sure how you're going to get the best out of him. If he plays central midfield, where does that put Martinelli? Where does that put Partey? Where does that put, who's the fella, the blonde-haired fella with the double barrel name from Croydon? Smith Rowe. I'm not sure where he comes into that. And if they are serious about playing him at left back and they send Tavares out on loan or whatever they may do, well, I wish them luck because he's a lovely lad, But the ball over the top at the back, the bite in the tackle, the lack of concentration. My brother and I, when he's ever on this team sheet as left back, and everyone quotes the last game of the season for Zinchenko. Well, bearing in mind that Villa were knackered at that stage, he'd hardly played. He was fresh as a daisy, and he came on and played some good balls. Well, I think you can say that. I think you can absolutely say that. But you've got to look further back. Pep chose to play Nathan Ake at left back over Zinchenko. And yet he's a central defender. What does that say about his quality? He chose, quite rightly, to move a career right back in Cancelo to left back as first. So to an extent, Zinchenko was third choice behind a right back and a central defender. So again, I just want to question the enthusiasm of the Arsenal fans getting carried away there. Gabriel Jesus, yeah, I do. I think he's got a great first touch and a turn, but he has had 5 or 6 years at City to really assume himself. And again, Pep is a master. He would have picked him if he thought he was as good as they think he is. And so I would put a little question mark about that. And I'd have a big question mark about some of the Spurs signings. Apart from, and I'm hopeless with names, there was a guy who was on loan last season at Spurs from the Italian league, and they signed him on permanently. And I've watched him, and he's bloody good. I can't remember his name.
Kulusevski.
Yeah, he's damn good. But the other 3 that brought in Richarlison, Bissouma, and Spence, I'm not sure. And Spurs need to get their act together, because if you add Winks and Dele Alli to that midfield ensemble, Spurs they've crashed and burned what you'd regard as 5 or 6 world-class midfielders and turned them into non-league players. I don't know how they do it.
Non-league players, that's harsh, but
well, Dele Alli, if you I'm trying to think of, I don't know, if you were Millwall and Dele Alli rocked up, I know they're their championship team, would you put him in your team?
I don't see him playing for Millwall because they don't like that kind of player. So, but I know what you're trying to say, Ian. I know what you're trying to say.
Play, yeah.
Okay, so jump to the comments, say hello to a few people. We've got the boss man Solo in the house.
Hi, Errol.
Mr. Silver Fox.
Hi, Foxy.
Won't be happy with some comments you're saying, I don't think.
I've said that I was on his show. I'm consistently honest. Big question mark on Zinchenko, but if anyone can help those 2 players, Arteta can.
We've got Rebel as well in the chat. Martin saying Arsenal and Spurs to take the other 2 spots. Matthew Bassett, big up Matthew. Thanks for coming in. We've got a lot of chat going off in here. Matt Smith, he reckons Gabriel Jesus is going to burn it up at Arsenal this season. There is a comment. There's a few comments here that I have seen. So Solo thinks it'll be City, Liverpool, Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal, then United. I can't see much difference in that. I probably wouldn't put Spurs third, but, it's almost there. Going on about what you were saying about the midfield, Martin's saying Spurs also had Wanyama, and he was great for him, and then all of a sudden dropped him.
That's 7 midfielders they've trashed.
Rebel saying Chelsea not done in the market, and they've got a good manager. Won't be saying Spurs and Arsenal are locked in. He's also saying that they've got Champions League to manage. It's going to be an issue for them.
Yeah, what we haven't mentioned is the Thursday night ball and chain around Arsenal and Man U's legs. That's a really tough one. Coming back to play a weekend fixture, I don't know, away at Palace or away at Villa or West Ham, and you've been playing Thursday night in Eastern Europe. That's a tough gig. That
it is.
That's the price of qualifying for Europe. So it's not a case like the thing is, you want to be in European football and you don't qualify for the Champions League, you've got to bite the Thursday night bullet. Otherwise, make every conscious effort to drop out of that and concentrate on the league. But if you do that, then you complain about missing out on the European money. Obviously, United and Arsenal would be looking at top 4, but let's be real. Too many games last season, they both dropped the ball in too many games, and you're thinking, hang on a minute. As much as these 2 teams aren't actually at their former best, they still should be winning games like this comfortably. For example, when Arsenal played us in April, I was thinking if Arsenal turn up, we could get in trouble. because they kind of got out of jail in the reverse fixture in October. As luck would have it, Palace were having none of it. We beat them 3-0, and it kind of put a bit of a dent in their European hopes. But obviously, you're still saying they're still a good enough side to get something from it, but they completely collapsed. United, on the other hand, were thinking, hang on, we can't afford to be playing in the Conference League. That's the worst possible scenario. I'm thinking, if you don't want European football that bad, just field the kids and be done with it then. You can't have it both ways. You can't bitch about being in European football, and then when you do get European football, it's not good enough. I get it. Pedigree of the club, you demand Champions League football, but when you've got Scott McTominay playing for you, it's like, no, you can't have Champions League football with McTominay playing in the Champions League. No, that's just that's just not good.
I actually quite like Scott McTominay in a way. He reminds me of Fletcher, who used to play at United, who always used to play well in the derby because I don't know, he had that bit in his teeth. But again, it's about the squad. If you've got McTominay in your squad and you've got League Cup games, you've got some of those qualification Europe Thursday night games, that's where McTominay would be really, really useful to save the legs of some of the other midfielders, mopping up all those sort of games. And that could well be what Arsenal do with Zinchenko. Arsenal could use Zinchenko heavily in that Smith Rowe, Martinelli kind of role to save them for the Premier League and mop up all those games where you don't want to send those two young lads to on the Thursday night brigades, the League Cup games, some of the early FA Cup games. Zinchenko could fill that gap. And Ukraine aren't going to the World Cup, if my memory serves me well. I think didn't they lose to Scotland or whatever? So he'll be fresh after for that Christmas period when they've got a lot of games together. As will Haaland, however.
Well, before we move on, I'm just going to say hello to Gaming Loader. Welcome. And there's a few people putting in their predictions. Obviously, we've seen solos of City first, Liverpool second, Spurs third, Chelsea fourth, Arsenal fifth, United sixth. Mr. Silver Fox has come in as well. He's saying City and Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham, West Ham.
Where are United in that list?
Yeah, United in that one.
United aren't going to be.
Martin saying
that Foxy guy, he's a card. I can't remember, he made some outrageous thing on Twitter about the Arsenal back central defenders and the quality of those four players today. And I think he almost broke Twitter today with that. I think his followers must have gone through the roof, but that was a beautifully controversial comment. Kind of clever.
Martin is also saying Liverpool, City, Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea, West Ham. So no United again in that comment. He's not believing the hype from the pre-season. And Rebels saying City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, United, Arsenal, then West Ham. I mean, there's some interesting predictions.
Well, I like the predictions for City, don't get me wrong, and I'd love it if they're all right. This is a very strange season for City. Pep has had glorious success without having a regular number 9, playing it on the deck. Haaland is a very, very different striker. Very different striker. Some of the mechanics of the game are going to change a little bit. So it will be interesting, to see. I'm excited because I'm not going to say winning is boring because you're never, having gone through all these decades of shit football that I watched, atrocious football, I will never get used to the success we have now. But, when you've got a beautiful tune to then suddenly have a variation off the theme, that's quite nice.
It is. Well, moving on to the next subject, we know this season is going to be a very, very weird season because we have the World Cup in the middle. The question is the World Cup going to affect the season in a whole? I mean, you're breaking it up, so it's basically two halves. You basically got 2 seasons in one season with that World Cup break in the middle. There's going to be teams that are going to be better off because they're not going to be playing international football. What's your thoughts on these? I'll go to you, Nathan, first. So what's your thought on this? Is the World Cup going to have a very big effect, or do you think it's just not going to affect it at all?
Well, the way you versed it is kind of fair because you look at certain club squads, they have more players going to the World Cup. You'll probably have more internationals playing at the so-called higher bracket of the league. Naturally, there won't be as many coming from Brentford, Palace, and the like. But we all knew what happened. The second that Qatar came out for 2022, we all knew this was going to happen. The minute you put the World Cup in the middle of the desert and it's 50-degree heat at its coolest in the summertime in Qatar, we're all thinking, okay, you want to put the World Cup all across the world. Fair enough. Totally valid excuse, totally valid little cover up by FIFA. But we all know why Qatar was chosen. We can't deny the fact that, yeah, exactly. And look, I'm all for it going across the world. I don't give a damn where it is in the world if it means that we all get to see a country's culture and the whole world. I love the World Cup that was in Japan and Korea in 2002. Thought that was a great World Cup. So I'm not remotely saying, oh, I just want it strictly in Europe or strictly in North America. But
South Africa was great too.
Yeah, Brazil was actually quite memorable as well. Obviously not if you're a Brazilian. But point being is that, yeah, City will feel it because they've got a lot of Portuguese, Brazilian, English. They've got a strong core of international players that will go to that tournament, as do Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, Tottenham, and so on and so on. But look, we all knew that the minute they moved into the winter, this was going to have a knock-on effect. Yes, it does disrupt the season that we're accustomed to. We love the fact that the Christmas fixture list is helter-skelter. It's games every 2 days. But you know, realistically, I love the World Cup right now to get out of the way. Then we can concentrate on the Premier League season coming up. But it's going to have a knock-on effect, more so to the bigger clubs, ironically. But this is why they spend so much money on bigger squads, so that they can have players that probably aren't going to go to the World Cup. But the majority of the top 6 clubs will have players gone there. So, look, you make that deal with the devil, you got to pay the ferryman. So, yeah, it's going to have a knock-on effect. But look, every club's going to be affected. So, you know, it is what it is, really.
Okay. I think, yeah, let's start at the beginning of this. I think, firstly, the season started earlier. Mm-hmm. So instead of, I think instead of about 3 weeks before the end of the transfer window, it starts about 4.5 weeks before the end of the transfer window. Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing I'd say is, with a transfer window that overlaps maybe about 25% more with the playing time before the transfer window works, that there is more chance of injuries in some of those top clubs, etc. And it's actually clubs like Palace and some of the smaller clubs in the Premier League, I fear, will get plundered close to the transfer deadline, which throws the season into disarray. You know, you can think of a Ward-Prowse, you can think of a Wilf. At Palace, you know, who's only got really a season left on his contract. So I think there could be a very interesting last week of August. When it kicks off, I think Nate's absolutely right. You know, the depth of the squad and who's going to go to the World Cup. And actually, it's a really unanswered question. We've never had a World Cup in that heat. You know, we've had it in Mexico and all sorts of places, but we've never had it in a place called Qatar. I don't know what that does to a sportsman's body. I really don't know. So I think there'll be a big question mark there. But I think it finishes like mid or early December. But all the way through that time period, as Premier League clubs look at the restart of the season, they'll be looking at players who are either injured or tired there. And they will then have the whole of that January transfer window to put it right. So if ever there was a season when I think the transfer window, the bigger clubs could plunder to hell, some of the smaller clubs, it could be now. You know, you'll have a chance to derail somebody's season. So I was just saying there that, you know, a player like Wilfried Zaha, if he doesn't sign a new contract, will be one of the sexiest players out there in the January transfer window if you've wrecked your left wing options at any club. I think it will be. Who knows what the effects will be, but the big rich clubs will counterbalance that effect by plundering the smaller clubs and sending them spiraling out. That's my.
But it depends on the smaller club situation. For example, if we do sell Wilfried Zaha, that rules out selling Michael Olise, which is a player I'd rather not lose. I don't mind losing Zaha, because Olise is the player I feel we need to see more of this coming season. Mm-hmm. Hence why all the links with Newcastle to Olise, we brought in Malcolm Abiwe from Derby. Same kind of formula we've used the last 2 or 3 years is bring players in from the Championship. Nobody's had their eye on. and we can slowly build them into Premier League players. Naturally, it's not going to work forever. It's going to come to an end at some point. But Dougie Friedman, to be fair to him, has worked it to a charm. Obviously, you're right. Bigger clubs will look at it and say, do you know what? We need a proven Premier League outlet player who can just fill in the gap. Zaha fits that perfectly because he had his best goal-scoring season last season. You could say the same for Philippe Coutinho at Aston Villa, Danny Ings. Obviously, these aren't the names that are straight off the bat world-class megastars, but you don't need that when you need squad fillers. You need players that can do the job and do it right. These are the kind of players you go for, Ian, and you're dead right. If people want to offer us crazy money for Zaha, by all means.
Imagine James Maddison doesn't make the World Cup.
Hmm?
And he sat there twiddling his thumbs, having a pint. How many clubs will plunder Leicester for James Maddison in come January? And that's not just UK clubs. This will be a Spain, German, French problem as well.
For sure. I mean, look, Alan Saint-Maximin, if he doesn't get in the French team and he's a quality player, you're thinking he could do a job. And Newcastle at the moment, yes, they can spend whoever they want, but Newcastle themselves know they can't yet talk themselves up to be we're a Champions League contending team. So there's a shortcut for Saint-Maximin.
He said Foxy's just said that the Premier League resumes on Boxing Day. I hadn't closed on the detail, and yeah, bloody hell, that will be a day, won't it?
That's going to be hard to skelter for sure.
Well, go through some of the comments quickly. Just want to say hello to Olakone. How are you doing, mate? He's put his prediction in as well. Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea, then United. Yep, Mr. Silver Fox says Premier League restarts on Boxing Day. I'm expecting crazy scores like Boxing Day 1963.
I don't remember that one, Foxy. Not even I can get my head around that one. A word for it, old boy.
Martin reckons that the players should be given time off until the new year after the World Cup.
Theoretically, when you look at some of the statements by Kevin De Bruyne about there's hardly been any, and again, this will come into play, the players have not had much of a close season. They were playing that stupid National League right the way through. So the players like Kevin De Bruyne, yes, he might hit the new season running because he's not even finished the last season. But, could he get, badly injured? I think there's a point there.
Solo saying, realistically, guys, we could see someone else winning the league apart from the so-called big teams. Well, we'll get into that in a little bit. We will. And Martin again saying, I also think the season shouldn't stop. Gives younger players a chance to get some Premier League experience for a few weeks and try and break into their manager's plans. See, I quite like that comment. I think that'd be a decent thing. Get some of the younger players in there. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but I think that'd be a great way to break in some of the youth.
Fight all the marketing guys. There's no way you'd have a Premier League or La Liga going on at the same time as the World Cup. Revenues would fall through the floor. Advertising, it would. The money boys wouldn't let that happen. But I like the idea. It's a good idea in theory.
Yeah. So, are we on agreement that the World Cup is going to affect this season?
100%.
Unprecedented times. No, there's no point, almost no point looking back to history because there's never been anything like this. No. The place of Qatar, the timing, it's bizarre.
Well, we all know, like I said, we all know why it got chosen. So let's not kid ourselves and say, "Oh, it's done for sporting integrity." That's FIFA's favorite spin on all these things. Listen, Jesse J called. It's all about the money, money, money. We all know what it's about.
And I've got a message from Mr. Beckham out there. You national treasure. You chasing a knighthood or whatever. You're a scumbag. You're the face of Qatar out there. After all those almost semi-slave labor guys have died out there from heat stroke and unknown aspects. Mr. David Beckham, if you're watching the show, hang your head in shame, sir.
Well, very strong comments. Very strong comments.
I used to like the guy as well.
So what we're going to do is we're going to move on again to the next subject, and it's outside shots to make top four. Obviously, we're all in agreement that the World Cup's going to change this season. So there is a chance for outside targets. So this is obviously this year. This is the table as it stands. Obviously, no games have been kicked off so far. Obviously, people have got their choice. We've seen it in the chat already. Who do you actually see out of this table having a chance of breaking into the top 4, or even as some people saying, possibly even going on to win the league?
Can I say something outrageous?
Yeah, go on.
Looking at history, when Brian Clough won the league with Nottingham Forest, it was the season after they were promoted. I know the world is different from there, but Cooper at Forest is a fantastic manager. He really is, I hope, a future England manager. They've got a bit of money. They've signed some what look like half decent players. I'm not saying they're going to win the league, but I think they could have a very good first season.
I mean, personally, I prefer Forest to stay up, but obviously I know we're talking about outside shots for the league. Logically speaking, there isn't going to be one because let's be real, as Ian has said, West Ham haven't really strengthened. I know they're in for Scamacca to try and probably take the burden off Antonio. Leicester have weakened to an extent that, there's no Achilles down on Tielemans. Brighton have obviously lost key players in a key player in Basuma. They could be losing Cucurella to Man City, which obviously makes me happy because anytime Brighton get weaker, I'm always happy to see them getting weaker. But, I mean, look, I think Steven Gerrard's Villa, he has to have a good second season because obviously this will be his first full season in charge. But Villa won't be title contenders. I'm sorry, Martin. I know he probably wants me to say that. You never know. Look, nobody backed Leicester to win it in 16. And yes, I'm aware City had an off season, Liverpool had an off season, Chelsea, so many of the so-called elite had off seasons. But listen, who's to say it can't happen again? Admittedly, it's very unlikely it will happen again. But football loves to throw a spanner in the works. Nobody in their right mind would have seen Forest going up because they were like firmly in the bottom half when Steve Cooper took over. And I'm aware it's two different kind of leagues I'm talking about, but you never know. But being realistic, I don't see any outside shots to win the league. But if I'm proven wrong, I'd love to see it happen, even if it were, God forgive me, Brighton. But it won't happen because, I can't live with that.
Nate, how do you think Newcastle will do? Another good manager and building a solid squad.
See, the thing is, I like Newcastle as a club, and I'm not really going to hate them for the money because let's be real. If it was any other club in the league, nobody would really bat an eyelid. But because Newcastle had Mike Ashley for years, people are saying, oh, but you got rid of Ashley, so how are you not, I think Newcastle, if Eddie Howe can get a tune out of them, will be a threat. But I don't think Eddie Howe is going to take them to the level that their owners want to take them. Bear in mind, you guys went through it with Mark Hughes. Had the British manager tried to have that kind of British identity, but you realize, look, Mark Hughes wasn't a terrible fit, but he wasn't what City needed to push into that bracket of, right, we're a Europa League, borderline Champions League, borderline Premier League contending side. He'll be a placeholder, but then they'll go in for the big name managers or a new manager that's posted to the scene and try and change that. But look, I love Newcastle because I've got memories of them playing in the Champions League. So I have no issue with Newcastle being successful. It's only if their fans turn into that arrogant, obnoxious kind of fan. Like City fans, for the most part, haven't changed. The success has come, but you remember the dark days of typical City. That will never change, even though City have got untold wealth behind them. But Newcastle will be an outside threat. Next 2 or 3 seasons, they need to start qualifying for Europe consistently. Otherwise, question marks will be hanging over. Wait a minute. They've bought the club and all that, but they're not qualifying for Europe and they're not competing in the cups. Because that's what Newcastle fans want, is silverware.
I think Mark Hughes might pick up some silverware this season. Here's a forecast for you. I think Bradford will win Division 2. There you go. Mark Hughes will find redemption. But let's hope Nigel chases him down with Mansfield. But anyway, I've gone into depth there. I agree with what you're saying there, Nate. I think the difference between Newcastle fans and Man City fans is Newcastle fans are very aggressive, whereas Man City fans have always been relatively passive and humorous.
Well, I'm sorry to say, but there's only one team winning League Two, and that's my local team.
We had this discussion, yeah.
We did. Ola Kunde coming in here. Kane to Bayern is gathering pace. That's going to be a big loss if that happens. Is that going to dent Spurs' chance to keep in the top 4?
£100 million, but surely Bayern haven't got that after they've just shelled out for De Ligt. Surely they haven't got that sort of money.
I don't think they have.
Well, you say that, but look at it. Barcelona are broken signing players. So anything's possible.
Both of those clubs are, and Real Madrid are put in this category. Bayern, Barcelona, and Real Madrid are horrific. I think Antonio Conte wagged his finger at Bayern this week. They're horrific at unsettling players, getting under the skin, getting players on the cheap, to be fair. They're vicious with that, with their rumours. I thought there was a law that said you couldn't approach players that were on contract, but they get all the sweaty old players from Bayern Munich, like Hoeneß and stuff, giving it the press and claim it's not to do with the club. I can't see it. I can't imagine they'll have the money.
No, I don't think they'll have the money either. But I'm gonna push you now. So, not to win the league. Let's say Man City or Liverpool win the league, because it's probably more than likely going to happen. One team out of that league that is unexpected, to be in the top 4 race by the end of the season. Which team out of all of them? So take out your Chelsea's, your Arsenal's, Spurs, United. Who do you think could be the team that surprises everybody this season? I'll ask Nathan first. Which team do you think would be the surprise of the season?
Normally I would go with teams like Southampton and Wolves, because historically they've been pushing to get into Europe and try to push up the table. But lately Southampton have regressed massively. Wolves have regressed massively, so I can't pick them as a logical choice. Obviously, bias-wise, I'd love to pick us, but Vieira still needs a way bit more time to get his own identity into our team. We've still got a hell of a lot of players from previous managers, even going back before Roy Hodgson. So I don't really want to...
Got to get rid of Matt Ward first. Yeah.
No. Listen, Joe Ward's dead food, but he's pretty much a cult hero. So I don't really have an issue with him as such. I'm more annoyed that like Luka Milivojevic is still at the club, for example, because I'm thinking this guy's just trash. He was great when he first came, but the time to move on is now. Obviously, we've signed Decore now, and he looks absolute mustard. But again, I don't like to buy too much into pre-season. But I would go out on a limb and maybe say Villa, because Villa has recruited smartly the last couple of years. But it's hard to call. I mean, look, if Gerrard can get a tune out of Villa, they could be one to watch, but realistically, I don't see anyone. But I'll use an educated guess and say Villa.
That's a good shout. I think Villa or West Ham is a thinking man's choice. Villa or West Ham, but I don't know. There's something about Forest. Steve Cooper is a great manager. They can fly under the radar. There's a bit of money been invested. Forest. I think Forest, maybe Newcastle, but the brain says West Ham and Villa.
No, Newcastle need 2 or 3 more years, because they've still got a lot of players from the Steve Bruce era, John Carver, Alan Pardew. There's still too many players in there that aren't going to push them up the bracket. There's every chance they could, but I don't think Newcastle's recruitment has been as good as they need it to be. Don't get me wrong. If they prove me wrong, I'll be the first to say, listen, humble pie, I'll eat it for 100%. But it depends on what kind of window they have. And so far, I don't think they've really signed anyone really that you're thinking, bloody hell, Newcastle are doing bits. But look, you never know with football. Football loves to, as I said, it loves to throw a spanner in the works.
No, it does. It does. It's going to kill me to say this, because I'm obviously a Man United fan, and my local team is Doncaster. But I think Leeds. I think we're going to have to watch Leeds this season. The new manager seems to be getting a bit of a tune out of them. Yes, they've lost Rafinha, but they've still got a decent bit of talent in there.
And they've lost Calvin Phillips.
Well, yeah. They've lost Phillips as well, but...
Isn't Dallas still badly injured?
He is. He is at the minute. But I still think they've got it. I still think they've got something where... Because you got to think, nobody in Leeds' team is going to World Cup, are they? So they're going to have a full-strength squad all season. And Leeds have caused issues, especially under the new manager.
Second season syndrome.
It could be second season syndrome, you're right. But that's going to be my shout, and it kills me to say that, because I really don't like Leeds at all. But I think they're going to be ones to watch personally.
Leeds will get relegated.
One comment I do that, the teams coming up, I think I've got a battle on the hands of like Fulham, but it'll be interesting to watch Everton. How long will Frank Lampard survive? Because to me, that looks like a car crash still. And if there's a man waiting in the shadows to come in and try to save him, it's got to be Sean Dyche, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But
I'm living for the day Lampard gets sacked. That guy mate, that guy winds me up so bad. It's just like, just take your L and move, mate.
He was a fantastic player. He seems like a good bloke. And yes, he'll have had a fair crack of the whip. He had a go, he had Chelsea and Derby and Everton. And if he doesn't make it, at least clubs have put some faith out of a player who really, really knew how to play the game professionally and skillfully. And I'd like to see a few more like that. But he's had his chance. The last chance.
But Ian, what I'd argue with Lampard, right, is when Vieira got the Palace job, he's first to get sacked. When it went slightly wrong for Vieira, he's hovering over the trapdoor. Lampard couldn't get a tune out of Everton half the season. The media said nothing. I'm thinking, hold on a minute. Protecting a media darling. Wait a minute. Like, Lampard's got infinitely better players and better money at his disposal. Can't get a tune out of Everton. Yes, Everton have spent money crazily and spent money way too much on players that aren't good enough. But
they're still crazy. I mean, when Newcastle, I'll take my hat off to Howe and the gang there, they bought, they had players like Taggart, Bruno in midfield, even paying well over the odds for Woods and then Trippier. I mean, they were warriors who were going to keep you in the Premier League. And what was Everton's answer to that? Dele Alli and Donny van de Beek. I mean, gee whiz. When you want warriors, you're getting yourself a couple of poodles there.
Yeah, but Ian, what made me laugh was, right, Van der Beek says, I don't want to go to sign up for a club that's getting relegated. So he chose Everton over Palace. How'd that work out, mate?
Mm-hmm. Hey.
He's clearly as intelligent field as he is on field.
No. Listen. Man, talk about I don't want to get relegated, but Donny. Mm-hmm.
He made a bad choice last season.
Like he could get off the train at Norwood Junction and walk to Palace, does he? He doesn't look like that sort of fella.
No, he'd get off at Crystal Palace and walk to Selhurst Park. That's what he would have done.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been going for nearly 50 minutes, so we're going to wrap this up now. It's been lovely talking to you. Nathan, where can we find you, mate?
You can find me over at Eagle Eyed Football. We do a lot of Crystal Palace content as well as some Premier League content. So you can find us over there. We'll be at pretty much most home games this season, a couple of away games where possible. And if you want to see more about Crystal Palace, Eagle Eyed Football is the place to be. That's where you can find me.
Cheers, Nate. See you soon.
Ian, where can we find you, mate?
Just pick up the phone, send me a message, and I'll pop on the show. I might run a couple of shows myself, one particularly just before the season, but I really enjoy joining other shows.
It's amazing. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining me. And people that are still here in the chat, please do like, share, and subscribe. It does mean a lot, and you'll get all the latest news and watch-alongs from everything to do with the Premier League. It's goodbye from me. It's a goodbye from Nathan. It's goodbye from Ian. Until next time, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.